Do this for the benefit of our readers and for people who watch the tape on line. That'll be online on April 25th. So it's not a debate. We don't guarantee equal time. We'll try and be polite. If you want to respond to something that an opponent has said, please do so politely. And we'll start by asking each of you to tell us your name, the office you're running for, even though we obviously know both, but people who are watching online don't. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, what you do for a living, why you're in this race, and then we'll move from there into some questions. Start with you.
Okay. My name is Ed Jones, originally from Oklahoma. I was born and raised there. Moved to Oregon in '87. I've been here ever since. I have a civil excavation company. And we do everything from residential to industrial. Right now we're doing a lot of the solar sites.
Why is it called a civil excavation company?
Civil is basically excavation.
Okay.
So, a lot of people refer to it as civil work and some people refer to it as excavation.
Okay.
So I like to refer to it as both so everybody knows what.
So what kind of machinery do you have?
We have everything from a little skid steer to a D8T cat.
So do you use a big auger if you're putting in a lot of that machine? Or, those
we have,
arrays?
yes.
You
Yeah.
ever put any of those big wind turbines?
No, we have not done that. No, just the solar panels, the solar farms that are going in. You'll see them. There's a lot around Salem that we've done. We have 2 going in Southern Oregon and about to start another one down there right now.
How many people work for your company?
We have about 16 right now.
And you're based in Bend?
Redmond.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So why are you running for office?
Just to give people an option. I'm a little bit more reserved than the current administration, and especially in the tax area. I really think that we're missing the boat in education. I would like to see some real reform there. We have an emotional problem in our nation today, and I think we can solve a lot of that through education and our school system.
Sorry, you said we have an emotional problem?
Yeah.
What's the emotional problem?
Well, the emotional problem is the fact that we don't know how to deal with issues, and we're not teaching our children how to deal with real life issues. I believe psychology and sociology needs to be expanded in our classrooms. We have a disconnect on a lot of levels compared to what we used to. We have mom and dad both working full-time jobs, and sometimes those full-time jobs are 12, 14-hour days, and we're not getting to spend the quality time that we once did with our children.
Okay. Have you run for office before?
I did. In 2016, I ran for governor. I was actually unaffiliated, and I didn't change my thing in time to Democrat, so I had to run as unaffiliated. I was born and raised in a Democratic family. Most of my family are Democrats. It's hard these days because we have such a divide between Democrats and Republicans. I would hope to unify that in some way if I won.
Why would you, Ed, why would you start, if you haven't run for, county commissioner, school board, or state representative, or other offices, why start at the top?
I got this passion about 3 years ago, and I have looked at those just by the people that I associate with and stuff. A lot of people talked me into going right for governor because of the business and associations I have. I had some choices to make, and I went with what my heart told me to do, and that's why I ran for governor.
Great, thanks. Governor Brown?
Yes, thank you. I grew up in Minnesota, Twin Cities.
Who are you? Introduce yourself
Sorry,
to our
forgot.
audience.
Kate Brown, currently serving as Oregon's governor. I grew up in the Twin Cities, Minnesota, suburbia, middle-class neighborhood. Did my undergraduate at University of Colorado. Came out to Portland to go to law school. I very much wanted to be an environmental lawyer at the time, and so I wanted to do it here and in this place. Spent a few years practicing law.
Why didn't you become an environmental law? Because you were doing juvenile law.
I
right?
did family and juvenile law. After law school, through law school, I realized that that was not my calling, that I loved it as a field of study, but not as an area of practice.
Okay.
So I ended up practicing in the family law arena for a handful of years in Portland. And then actually it was December of 1990, I took a job as an advocate for a women's organization in Salem. And at the time, the Women's Rights Coalition was the coalition of women's organizations throughout the state, Planned Parenthood, AUW, and they pooled their resources and hired an advocate for every session. And
Well, how's an advocate different from a lobbyist?
same thing.
Okay, so you were a lobbyist.
I was a lobbyist,
Okay,
yes.
all right.
Lobbying for
For
better
good.
laws on child support enforcement. I lobbied for women's health issues,
Yeah.
and I advocated for better laws around domestic violence. One of the bills that I worked on that was really an eye-opener for me was legislation that enabled parents to stay home with their sick children without fear of losing their jobs. And when Governor Barbara Roberts signed that legislation, Oregon became one of the first states to recognize family medical leave. And for me, it was a realization that I could make a difference, that I could work to make Oregon a better place for everyone. Following that, I sought an appointment to the legislature. That was the easy part. The challenging part was the Democratic primary, which I won by 7 votes. I spent 17 years in the legislature. I spent 6 years as Secretary of State, and I think everyone knows how I arrived here when my predecessor resigned in February of 2015. I've been really pleased about what we've been able to accomplish under my leadership.
So if you had to give yourself a grade under your leadership since February 2015, what would you give yourself?
I would let the voters give me a grade, and hopefully by supporting my reelection, but I've been able to accomplish a number of things, from automatic voter registration. We were the first state in the country to do that. We created the Oregon Promise so that students in Oregon who graduate from our high schools can go to community college for a mere $50 a semester. We signed into law the nation's first coal to clean, intentionally moving Oregon away from coal-generated electricity. I'm very pleased about the work we were able to do to sustain funding for the Oregon Health Plan, as well as cover 15,000 children that did not have access to health care. And of course, while we're talking health care, very pleased with the work we are doing to make sure that in Oregon, every woman, regardless of her zip code, her income, or her immigration status, can access the full complement of reproductive health services.
Okay. Let me stop you there. We'll come back to a lot of those issues. Candy, tell us about yourself, please.
I'm Candace Neville.
So-
I was born in Winnebago, Minnesota, not that far from the Twin Cities. And so I spent my grade school there and high school and middle school in Iowa. I went to the University of Iowa. I am running for office. My background, I should put in there, is a mixed bag. I've taught GED. I'm presently a developer, a real estate broker. I have a vacation rental mini lodge. I've done freelance writing, including the occasional pieces for the Oregonian, although it's been a while for that, usually opinion pieces. Mother of 3, have 3 grown children, new grandmother. So I'm running for office for governor. There are so many things we do in Oregon that I actually like. I like everything Kate Brown just said. I thought those were things I agree with and that I want us to do and continue doing. What I am not seeing right now that I want to see, that I'm actually qualified for, is Oregon right now, in my opinion, is kind of wide open. We can develop into what we want to be or what somebody else wants us to be. And I see things like, my biggest thing that catapulted me into the race was the liquefied natural gas pipeline heading to Coos Bay. And I really have a hope that every candidate actually will take this stance, that so whoever's governor, this is going to be really taken on strongly. With the liquefied natural gas pipeline, it's not just environmental versus the economy. I see our future with environment and economy really strong if we play it that way and we establish it that way, and if we develop it that way. That pipeline comes from someplace else. It is last century's fuels. I see that a lot of things are switching to wind and solar, and I don't want us to be the state that buys a shipload of typewriters right before Mac comes out. So I see us at this time when some would like to use us, they'd like to burrow through not just private land, but Native Americans' land, and go to Coos Bay, and those factories from that sort of thing are exceedingly dangerous, and sometimes people who live near such factories as those, actually it's a health risk. So for us to be strong on healthcare, which I am, and the state of Oregon is, and then put people in a position of risk with it, I'm against it. So it's not like it's not just don't do the pipelines, be green and clean and frolic. It's bring in other industries, invite them in and promote them and establish them and that's what Oregon is, a known brand nationally and globally. I see a lot of profit for us.
Okay, same question for you as for Ed. I mean, you've got a pretty entrenched incumbent here who's got a lot of money and a lot of friends. Why are you running for governor instead of something at the local level?
I'm running for governor because of what I care about.
Okay.
If I cared about, I care about a lot of things, but I really, really care about this liquefied natural gas pipeline because I think it covers everything: health, economy, branding, living wages. I think there's a plan for Oregon, and it's actually the opposite of what Oregon should be planning. So I'm running because I care deeply about that, and that hasn't been addressed strongly.
Well, so we're on the topic, Governor. Where are you on the LNG pipeline that's been on again, off again, on again, off again?
Well, right now, the application process is incomplete. I believe that it's my duty and my obligation as Oregon governor to make sure that our statutes are followed, that our regulations are complied with, and that Oregonians have an opportunity to have their voices be heard. And yesterday, in front of the land board, we had an example of that. The LNG pipeline was not on the agenda, but there were several folks, actually most of them from Eugene, that showed up and wanted to testify on the LNG pipeline, and we provided them an opportunity to do that. The reality is that we have a regulatory process in place, and I think it's important that the regulatory process be fair and that I stay neutral through the regulatory process. As you know, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission is the decider on this particular issue.
Right. And they had previously decided it was unnecessary.
Correct.
The Trump administration has said
Changed,
that
they
would
cleaned the slate and put in their new appointees, yes. So there are about a dozen permits that the state has to go through.
Ed, do you have a view on the pipeline?
Yeah, I do. I actually support it, and I tell you why. Is because it brings solid industry to Oregon. Also, I trust our regulations. I trust the people who will be installing this, and the fact that Oregon is pretty stringent on this. We're not going to allow something in the state of Oregon that would hurt us down the road. And I think that we have enough things in place to prevent those actions. I mean, nothing's rock solid and perfect all the time, but it does bring industry and development to the state of Oregon and more jobs, and I appreciate that.
Governor, you mentioned Barbara Roberts. I know she's a mentor of yours, and so she came into political office in part because of her interest in children with special needs. Your predecessor was very interested in healthcare policy. Governor Kulingoski was very interested in labor negotiations and union contracts. What is the one issue that really defines you or keeps you up at night? The thing that after you're no longer governor, people will say, well, Kate Brown, the thing she really cared about was what?
That's a really great question. I think for me, one of the things that keeps me up at night is the challenges we're facing in the workforce right now, and I would call it the skills gap between the workforce that we have and the workforce that we need to fuel the economy of Oregon's future, and we are really struggling. And part of this for me is that we are seeing incredible prosperity, economic prosperity in parts of Oregon, but that prosperity has not been inclusive. It doesn't include all of our rural communities, for example. It doesn't necessarily include our communities of color and our low-income communities. And I want Oregon to be a state where all of our communities can thrive. So it's how do we build the career pathways so that folks that are struggling to make ends meet are able to get good paying jobs in Boardman and in Ontario and in Gresham. How do we make sure that our students coming out of high school have the hands-on learning experiences, that they have the access to internships with the private sector, so they want to stay in school and finish school, and whether go on to college or career or technical education. So
what have you done and what are you doing?
we're working on a couple of things. One, we were able to invest $170 million with the help of ballot measure 98 in career and technical education in STEM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And the reason why I think this is important is that we know that students who have access to hands-on learning, CTE, their graduation rate is roughly about 86%. As you know, our graduation rate in Oregon right now is about 75%. So if we can make sure that every student has access to hands-on learning, that will do two things. Number one, it will substantially improve our graduation rates. And number two, it will help provide a skilled workforce that employers are struggling with.
Did you support ballot measure 98?
Yes, I did.
Because that was pretty contentious.
Yes.
Some of your allies did not support it. Am I correct? Didn't know we
I don't remember, but I supported it.
Okay. Sorry.
That's okay. My goal is to invest $300 million, which I think would be full funding for ballot measure 98 in the next biennium. This is a couple of pieces, and I've kind of lost my train of thought here, but number one, the hands-on learning literally opens students' eyes to the power of their own potential. It connects classroom to career, and it makes education relevant. I had the opportunity to meet two students in Bend High School. At the high school in Bend, they've made an intentional decision to increase high school class sizes in core curriculum like math and English so that they could have a very diverse array of career and technical ed. So students can build snowboards and skis. They can learn how to put a yearbook together and do other graphics arts. But two of the students I met were in the industrial arts class, and they were literally learning how to build an electrical car. The one young man I talked to was an international baccalaureate student. He said he would have dropped out but for this program, because for him it made his education relevant. And as I met him, he was graduating in a few weeks and going on to work in his family's construction industry. The other young man I met really struggled with learning issues, and he was staying in high school because he had access to learning how to build an electrical car and the mechanics behind that. So I think it's critically important. It's essentially two tracks, but every employer that I've talked to says they're struggling to find the workforce that they need, and we've got students dropping out of high school. We need to connect the two.
Okay. Ed, do you want to take a crack at that? Has this governor done a good job with Oregon's educational system?
Well, I don't know everything, but that is an excellent approach right there. I love that because intellectually we're not all the same, and especially when it comes to the students. Some grow and learn faster than others, and some don't have the ability to reach the 4.0 status, and they need something to catapult them into the workforce and give them the opportunity. I love the arts and crafts. I've always said that, we, I've lost my train of thought. I apologize, but
that's okay. Candy, let's have you take a crack at that one.
I was talking to my son-in-law, who's a teacher
Yeah.
at Jefferson High School, and I like any step that goes forward and helps the schools.
Yeah.
I like that step. And I said to him, you know, because there's always different things proposed. I said, what do you need? He said, we need money and we need resources. So I believe that, and I believe we actually have been too stingy in funding schools. I believe we should be raising corporate taxes. They should be paying their fair share. And I want to point something out. When corporations look for a place to go, schools actually make a difference. And when you're 48th in the nation for graduation rates, that's not a draw. And those who would come and do it anyway, they're going to be in private schools, which hurt our public schools even more. So people don't like the thought of taxes, and I don't either, but one thing I'm really in favor of is the corporations paying their part. It's a privilege to live here and make money here, and it's an obligation of us all to make sure there is funding. And just to reiterate what my son-in-law said, we know how to teach.
Okay. So Governor, last time you ran, which of course was a short time ago because of the Kitsap
The
resignation,
back-to-back.
you talked about your desire to raise graduation rates. They're up a little bit, but
Yes.
we're still in the high 40s. So why is that?
In the high 40s?
Well, our
Yes, in terms of number.
Yeah.
The graduation rates have increased close to 5%
Yeah.
since I became governor. I think this is challenging. My vision is for an Oregon where every student graduates from high school with a plan for their future and the skills to compete in a global economy. I think that's going to require multiple things. In terms of specifically high school graduation rate, I think you know that I brought on Colt Gill to be the Education Innovation Officer. He developed a strategic plan which we passed last legislative session and funding to assist school districts with tackling graduation rate. Focus 3 areas. I mentioned career and technical ed and STEAM, hands-on learning. Secondly is making sure that students that are impacted by trauma have the supports and the services that they need so they can be focused on success in the classroom as opposed to survival. And the third piece is making sure that students attend school, basically. That we implement a system of early indicator warning systems. We know who these students are coming into high school. We need to make sure that they have the wraparound services to succeed in high school. I truly believe that career and technical ed is one component of that. But I don't think that's going to solve our high school graduation rate. I think we need a seamless system of education from cradle to career. That means having a comprehensive and targeted system of early childhood care, early supports for families, quality daycare, and of course, making sure that our students have access to pre-K and early Head Start. Since I've become governor, we've increased the number of slots available for pre-K and Head Start. We are only at the tip of the iceberg. And until we have students showing up to kindergarten ready to learn, we can't see substantial changes, I think, in the system. That's going to drive it. The other piece, though, is educators and making sure our teachers in the classroom have the tools that they need. We know that a lot of early teachers, first-time, second-year teachers, stop wanting to teach. Through the Educator Advancement Council, we can provide coaching and mentoring. This was a partnership developed with the Chalkboard Project, Sue Hildick, and educators and superintendents and legislators. And we can also make sure that we can diversify the educator pipeline, making sure that educators reflect the communities that they teach in, so that students need both what I call windows, but they also need mirrors, educators who reflect them.
Okay.
May I?
Sure.
Before I say the thing, the classrooms are too big. That's just a real simple one. That one takes more teachers and more money. But one of the reasons that I think some of the graduation rate is so poor is I think sometimes people don't think what's use. There isn't really a specialty sort of job waiting for me. So I think some of that goes back to recognizing what each community has to offer and helping each community develop their own particular brand of business. And that can be all kinds of different things. One thing I think of with Coos Bay is that they're really set up by being by the ocean for shipping other things than gas, such as even at this time of life, in history, tiny house kits. Sears used to make house kits. And, you know, so that's Coos Bay, and there's other things they can do too, but each community has its pluses. And if they can be mentored and helped to recognize what it is, so that kids in school could see, hey, when I graduate, I'm not just going to be an unemployed or low-paid graduate, I'm going somewhere.
Yeah. Governor, last year you pulled together a blue ribbon panel or task force to look at the public employee retirement system and to look at ways to try and reduce the unfunded liabilities. So your committee met half a dozen times, produced a thick report with lots of ideas. It's not clear to me that anything has happened beyond the production of that report. So can you tell us what you were actually doing?
Sure, and I want to say thank you to the volunteer members of that task force. It was some of the brightest people at a table that I've seen in a while. They were really came up with some creative and innovative ideas. There were two issues that we focused on during the last legislative session. One was to incent local jurisdictions to pay down their unfunded actuarial liability. And I don't remember if it came out of as a result of the report or PERS is now letting all of the jurisdictions know on their website what their actual unfunded actuarial liability is. We created an employer incentive fund at a 4-to-1, 1-to-4 match rate to incent local employers to buy down their UAL. As you know, the total system's liability is roughly $22 billion, and the state's portion of that is merely that, a portion of that, and it's the 900 jurisdictions that help make up that $22 billion unfunded actuarial liability. So one of the keys was to incent local jurisdictions to pay down their UAL. So we were able to fund an employer incentive fund, EIF, and the other piece we were able to do,
What money did you put in there?
25 million.
Okay. And are people telling you, or have local jurisdictions said, yeah, we're going to start matching that? So that's the idea, right? You
Right,
put up something,
yes.
they put up.
They were very supportive of the legislation,
Okay.
yes. The other piece is,
Where's the 25 coming from, general fund?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
But I have to tell you, I was pleased that the legislature found resources for it because we were hoping to get the creation of the fund and not necessarily expecting to get it funded. So I was very pleased. The second piece is capturing unanticipated revenue, revenue that we're not expecting, and putting it in essentially into side accounts for K through 12 schools. The goal here being that we want to reduce the amount of liability for K through 12 schools and thereby reduce employer rates and enable more money to go directly in the classroom.
So give us an example of unanticipated revenue. You're talking about lawsuit?
Lawsuits, yep,
proceeds or
absolutely.
Tobacco settlement type
I
stuff?
don't think we included tobacco settlement in the final
Because we
legislation.
already know about that. But
Yes.
So are we talking about
Litigation, my recollection is lottery dollars as well.
significant money? How do you
We don't know because it's unanticipated revenue. So it's revenue over and above what was forecast.
Right. So what about, there are harder options that we haven't taken. For instance, Matt, the 6% employer pickup that many employers pay. So
let me tell you, we talked about the unfunded actuarial liability. The first piece that we tackled in the 2017 legislative session was making sure that our Treasury staff were fully staffed up. The reason being is that their 20-year average investment rate of return is better than the private sector, and we wanted to make sure we are getting the best rate of return on our PERS investment. The second piece is the PERS unfunded actuarial liability task force that we did in legislation to follow up. The third piece for me is what I call employee skin in the game. And you just mentioned the 6% pickup. Under my leadership and through my negotiations, about 98% of state employees are paying for their 6%. And then we are,
what was it when you took office? Do you have any idea if it's 98 today?
I think it was a relatively low percentage.
Okay.
shall.
And you accomplish that by giving them some money up front?
Yes.
Yeah, so you
Through
front-loaded that,
negotiations.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead, keep interrupting.
The second piece was, the third piece was skin in the game, and that means making sure that public employees share the risks of the market. And there was legislation introduced in May of 2017 that I am optimistic we can move forward on the next legislative session.
We're always looking for independents in candidates, and we've talked with you about this before. You're closely associated with public employee unions. They've been big supporters of yours. Can you give us an example, since you've been governor, of when you've had to disappoint the public employees and tell them something they didn't want to hear that was significant?
I can tell you that I've had multiple conversations, not just with public employees, but with legislators on both sides of the aisle. I believe very strongly in amending the Constitution and providing for limits on campaign finance reform by amending Article 2, Section 8 of the Oregon Constitution.
Okay. How about another example?
Not public employees specifically. I will tell you that not all of my Democratic colleagues are excited about the work we're doing to bring fairness to the tax system for small businesses.
So can you be a little more specific?
Yes. I signed, I'll be signing into law Senate Bill 1528, which is the disconnect. Under this legislation, Oregon small businesses will get a special tax rate and on their Oregon income taxes. And pursuant to Oregon law, those small businesses look like LLCs, limited liability corporations, partnerships, and I'm forgetting one of the other ones. No. That's what we want to add. That's what we want to add.
Okay.
The second piece is making sure that folks still get their federal tax deduction through the Trump tax plan.
So you got pushback from Democrats on?
No, not on signing that. No. But what was really clear as we were tackling the language in Senate Bill 1528 is that the federal Trump tax plan gives tax breaks, special deductions for sole proprietorships, and those were left out of the list in the 2013 grand bargain. And so I am absolutely committed to bringing sole proprietorships into the special rates that we have for
That's where
small
you're getting
businesses.
pushback from
Yes,
Democrats. Okay.
yes,
Hold that
yes.
thought, we'll come back.
Okay.
So Candy, can you tell us, same question, give us an example of your independence in a place where you disagree with the Democratic Party orthodoxy?
Well, what I keep thinking of is the pipeline is one of the things.
Well, most Democrats oppose that.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Haven't run into that too much. I would taxes. You know, I'd love to see corporate taxes. I mean, I'm not in.
All Democrats in Oregon more corporate tax.
Nigel, that is not true. Not all Democrats.
You're making me happier as I go.
Okay, we're looking for a place
But
where you disagree, where your intellectual independence will show up.
You know, I really agree a lot with Democrats, is the
Okay.
truth of the matter.
Okay.
And I really, where I get frustrated sometimes is when Democrats don't kind of agree with themselves and kind of step back a little and don't act as independent individually and as a group as they can be. So, you know, I guess that's kind of boring, but I very
Okay.
much agree with Democrats.
Ed, where do you disagree with the Democratic Party orthodoxy?
Well, this is a tough one, but you know, a lot of people won't appreciate this, but I don't like being considered a sanctuary state.
Okay, why not?
Now, trust me, I want to, the people who are here, the dreamers and their parents that contribute to the community and have served us well and work hard. I believe they need a system that will help them gain citizenship. And whether that's a work visa or an education visa, And then obviously we'd have to work closely with the federal departments
Yes.
to work out a negotiation with them that if these people could show that they were a benefit to the community,
Yep.
that they would gain citizenship. I don't like the idea of harboring any criminals. If I break the law, I get in trouble.
Okay.
I expect that from everybody. But I do understand the system is flawed too. I hope that if you win again, that you work toward, really fixing that and helping these people. But I want to keep other people from just feeling they can come here, and because it does take jobs and it drives wages down for the Hispanic community here now. And so,
Okay. Do you own your own company?
yes, sir. I do.
How's it organized legally? LLC?
LLC.
Okay, so the disconnect costs you money, correct?
Yes.
Can you own your own company?
Regarding immigration,
No, do you own your own?
Yes, I do. I own
What-
two.
How's it organized?
one is an LLC and one is a S corporation.
So you also are going to lose when the governor signs the disconnect.
That's fine.
Nigel, I'm going to push back on you
Okay.
a little bit.
I know, they already got the tax break, but they,
Right,
they
they-
want, as you pointed out in the
Right,
press
this would be a
conference.
third
they
tax
got the
break.
third tax
Yes,
break.
yes,
So-
yes.
So, do you agree with the governor's rationale that you don't deserve a third tax break? In other words, that by disconnecting from the federal tax code, you're going to pay a little bit more money than you would have if she hadn't signed this bill?
And we don't know where that's going to land yet, but any time that I get taxed, it hurts my employees. It keeps them from getting, wage hikes or bonuses or how much bonus they get.
Yeah.
We're very proud, and part of when Trump did the tax breaks, in December, we were able to give each one of our employees 10% bonus on what he made that year.
Okay.
That's the best we've ever done.
Yeah.
We did that because we knew that we were going to get tax breaks this year.
Yeah.
We knew that business was flourishing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I can do that next year. And so that takes money from the employee. And, I'm not going to get hurt really any worse. Because I'm going to adjust my entire budget based on where do I end the next year, because I've got to either expand and hire more employees, which is always our goal, or pay better, or better benefits.
Right, but if she signs 1528, which she said she will, the governor will, you're not going to get that third tax break. Are you okay with that?
No, I don't appreciate that.
Can't you
Just being honest.
I am okay with that.
Okay.
And I'm really sorry about the tax break through the federal government. It doesn't even last long enough. And it occurred to me one day that when in about 7 years, I think it is, and they need funding,
Yeah.
that we're the funding,
Well, Trump will be down to that.
Yeah, but
All right.
that's part of the picture.
Okay, so
But let me say this.
Sure.
I'm not the governor, so I don't see our entire budget
Yeah.
and what we're up against. Nobody does except for you and the people surrounding you. So I can't say that I might do the same thing if I was in there. If I needed to boost education, which is my main priority,
Yep.
is to make a difference there.
Okay. Just want to run through a few quick questions, and then we'll let you guys out of here. In 2016, there was a Democratic primary for president. Who did you vote for in that primary?
I did not vote for,
Didn't vote for Hillary or Bernie.
no,
You're running for office, but you didn't vote.
no.
Okay.
I didn't see anybody that I truly liked.
Governor, who did you vote for?
Hillary.
Hillary, but I did pledge to help whoever won
Okay.
between those two.
Okay. That's great. So Governor, you called a special session, or you said you will call for a special session last week, and some people looked at that and said that is a very political use of a special session. You're taking 250,000 perhaps sole proprietors who might be angry at you, as Ed is, for taking away tax break, and you're going to come into session just to give those 250,000 sole proprietors a tax break. Isn't that the use of the legislature for your political gain?
I think it's about fairness, and in this case, as I mentioned, the Trump tax plan highlighted the inequities in Oregon's tax system. by allowing S corps, LLCs, and partnerships and sole proprietorships to get this new tax break that they have created. I think the smallest of our small business deserve this.
Why didn't you bring that up in February?
I did.
Okay. Couldn't get it done.
Couldn't get it done.
Okay. Okay.
Can I go back to something,
Sure.
because I apologize,
Sure.
I misunderstood the
Yeah, I was
previous
worried about
question.
that.
You asked which president that I voted for.
Yeah.
Okay, I voted for Trump. I tell you why. I've always voted for the person that I felt would best serve the nation.
Yeah.
And as a business owner,
Yeah.
I felt like we needed a president that would run the government like a business.
Yeah.
And he was a successful business owner.
Would you
and
vote
that's
for
why-
him? Would you vote for him again?
Absolutely,
You would. Okay.
yes.
Governor Brown, you said recently that you would not obey the president's desire to send Oregon troops to the border. Can you find it in yourself to say anything positive about this president?
Can I find it in myself?
Is there any policy, anything that he
I
has
had
done?
something, let me think for a minute. I will tell you that the Trump's administration incompetence and chaos is causing uncertainty in terms of the economics in Oregon. Whether I talk to a wheat farmer in Eastern Oregon or somebody doing manufacturing, their incompetence is causing chaos and uncertainty here in the market. In terms of yes, the one thing I am actually pleased that we are working together on is with the administrator of the EPA, and that is cleaning up the Portland Harbor. He's absolutely committed to making this happen, as am I. It's a job creator. We think we can create 50,000 jobs in inner east side and west side Portland.
Scott Pruitt needs somebody to say something good about it.
Yes, he
Nobody
does.
has done
He
that
does.
for a while.
But this was also very much a Trump priority. I heard him talk about it, so.
Okay. Can you say anything positive about this
He
president?
brought us all together, and people who were lethargic and a little bit picayune or whatever have seen the light, and I'm absolutely, the thing that helped me get up every morning after that were all the people behind the scenes working hard to help all kinds of different issues, the environment, the immigrants. But before I leave, which I have to do in a
Yeah.
minute, there's something I'm dying to say, and that is about tax breaks. I get kind of weary of always hearing about tax breaks,
Yeah.
and I think it gets overlooked a lot, how important it is to not just be, having a tax break, but how to get the income up. Get the income up, and there's a lot of ways to do it, as governor or in a lot of ways. It's taken we kind of fall into just business as usual, keep my pennies, but we need to get the income up, and that brings in a lot of funding too. And the tax break thing, I think it takes our eyes off the multitude of things that are important to us all.
Okay,
Can I go back to the National Guard piece?
She's
Okay.
gotta go,
Okay,
so-
okay, all right.
What is the most embarrassing thing about you that has appeared on Facebook? We're asking every candidate and
Let's
every
see, the most embarrassing thing about me.
that has
Well,
appeared on
I put on Facebook recently what I thought was a hilarious little post that my son and I had done back and forth, and I put it on his birthday, and frankly, it was pretty funny. And I get this text from him saying, "Mom, have some boundaries, take it down."
Okay. All right, great. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Okay, Governor Brown, you want to go back
Thank
to
you.
the National Guard?
Thank you. Yes, I wanted to go back to the National Guard, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for our Oregon's National Guardsmen and women. I've worked with them in multiple capacities, from firefighting. I think we had over 700 National Guardsmen and women helping us last year, supporting firefighting efforts. They supported our efforts on the solar eclipse. These are very hardworking men and women, and I don't want them being used as political pawns to make up for the chaos of the Trump administration.
Okay. Great. I wanted to ask you something that was actually somewhat related to that, but I just forgot what it was. I know what it was. So one of your achievements that you haven't mentioned today, usually politicians mention all their achievements, was passing the transportation package, $5.3 billion, I believe.
You cut me off.
Okay, all right, so let's come back to that. Part of that was not cemented into legislation or statute was the possibility of tolling I-205, I-5, potentially both. So I know there's a task force that's having, I believe, its first meeting next week.
Yes.
So tell us, Oregonians, your constituents, whether we should toll or not toll. And don't tell me that's for the task force to decide. If you were king and or queen and could
Thank
make
you.
that happen, would we have tolls on I-5 and I-205 or not?
Here's the harsh reality, and I've had an opportunity to tour the Abernathy Bridge, which is the 205 bridge. The reality is we don't have the resources to make sure that it is seismically resilient, that it would be safe and withstand an earthquake. And I don't know what the likelihood of a 9.0 earthquake is happening here in Oregon, but the reality is I think we must be prepared, and certainly tolling's on the table as a way to pay for the seismic retrofitting that we need.
Right, I know it's on the table, so should it happen or should it not?
Yes.
It should happen. Do you have any view on tolling? I know we're not talking about Redmond and
Yeah.
Deschutes, but you probably come up to the metro area, you're aware of the issue.
Yeah. Well, obviously I don't know all the ins and outs like Ms. Brown would because I'm not in her position.
Yep.
But I can see too that if we do that, then we create more state jobs that take more money from the taxpayers. And so my question would be, what is the benefit from that 100%? And why can we not get that from the federal administration to fix that?
Federal administration not giving Oregon anything.
Yeah.
They're not giving any of the states anything in terms of infrastructure.
Yeah.
So Governor, you're asking the voters to bring you back for 4 more years. And you've talked about the imbalance between the employees that are, the students that we're producing and what employers want. So we understand that's a big priority of yours. What is the one thing that you really are dying to tackle aside from that workplace mismatch in the next 4 years? Why should we bring it back?
Improving educational outcomes for all of our students.
That's it. That's
Absolutely.
the number one priority.
Absolutely.
Okay. And how should we judge whether you've done that?
Whether we actually are able to move the needle in terms of high school graduation rates, students showing up to kindergarten ready to learn,
Right.
and 3rd grade reading.
So we heard that as a priority 2 years ago. We've made some progress, but relative to other states, we haven't made much progress. So how are we going to see us actually move up the league table, not just move up like everybody else is moving up?
Because I have a comprehensive plan. It's going to require additional investments, and that's going to mean additional resources on the table. We're actually working very closely with both our friends in the labor community and in the business community to take a look at every single dollar that we're spending right now. The cost containment efforts that we have coordinated with the legislature and my administration result in roughly $400 million in savings. I think there's still more work to be done. That's where we're holding meetings around Oregon with the business community to talk about and hear their input about ways we can spend taxpayer dollars more effectively and efficiently. I suspect you will see a revenue conversation as well. But the other piece is figuring out how we sustainably fund the Oregon Health Plan, which, as you know, has been a challenge.
Yep.
We were able to get funding for this biennium, but it ends at the end of the biennium. We had a coordinated effort to win that at the ballot measure 101. And so those are what I would consider the revenue challenges, the funding challenges that we need to meet, but I absolutely am adamant that we need additional investments in early childhood education in K through 12 and post K through 12 system as well.
Okay, great. Ed, what is the most embarrassing thing about you on Facebook that has appeared on Facebook?
Well, I can't pinpoint anything exactly, but probably my own post. I get the feedback from the child that, Dad, why'd you post that? But I can't think of anything in particular.
What single thing that you posted did your child take most?
Well, anytime that I tag her in something, it's detrimental.
You have a daughter?
Yeah.
How old is she? How old
She's
is she?
16.
Okay.
So,
Governor, most embarrassing thing about you that's appeared on Facebook?
I would answer it a little differently. I don't have my own personal Facebook page.
Okay.
So I peer my friends and what they're doing through my spouses.
Okay.
So I get to watch all of my family and friends through the first gentleman's Facebook page.
And have you seen anything that refers to you about, your equestrian, your skills as an equestrian?
No. It's just sometimes the first gentleman posts photos that I would rather he not.
Okay, well, we'll have to start monitoring that. All right, well, great. Well, thank you both very much.
Thank
for
you.
coming in and for
Good to see you.
indulging our questions.
Really nice to have you guys all participate. So, thank
All
you.
right, thanks.
Mr.
Thank
Jones,
you, ma'am.
good luck to you.
Very nice
Thank
to meet
you.
you.
Really nice to meet you.